Okay, good morning, everyone. Hope you all had a good Labor Day weekend. Since you missed basically your first day of lecture, with the holiday coming up, wanted to take this time to kind of go through your case study this week. It'll be your first one, and I kind of wanted to just kind of discuss things I've seen in the past that are successful that will help you actually get this case study completed correctly and on time. And also things that I've seen people struggle with. Such as your first case study. I think if we set the standard for the first study case study now, it'll make the case study in the future easier. And again, I'm Luis. I'm your success specialist. I kind of wish I had been there on Monday, last Monday, but obviously I had other trainings that I wasn't physically able to attend class. But I will see you all next Monday when we come back for lecture and lab. Okay, so kind of the agenda, I'll go over some general info, some best practices for case studies. We'll go over a mini case. Um, I didn't put it in here, but I'll also kind of show you, um, give you a little jump start on your chapter, or sorry, your unit one study guide, so you can get that completed and turn that in today. Excuse me, today. And then I'll kind of go over just general citations, how to cite our um, commonly used references here in the class. So first, general info. So case studies are usually due on Saturday evening. Always verify in Canvas. So Dr. Carter might sometimes give little extension, little extra time to Sunday morning, depending on the case or if there's some type of major holiday or major event going down that make Saturday difficult. But for the most part, Saturday at 11:30 p.m. is when your case studies are due. And you can turn them in obviously well beforehand if you want to. This is the main homework assignment for this class. Most of our other assignments are very minor in terms of points, but it's primarily going to be case studies and exams where you get the majority of your grade in the lecture portion, and then obviously the lab portion has its own thing. And then you do have a success coupon. The success coupon allows you to basically turn in something late, typically within 48 to 72 hours. Just verify with Dr. Cotter how long that extension is. And it's only worth 5 points if you do save it and turn it in at the end of the semester. So what I tell everybody to do is if you're not going to miss any case study, then save it towards the end and get your 5 bonus points. But if for some reason you did miss a case study, um, that's 10 to 30 points that you could be getting. And I would just tell you to use the success coupon to get those 10 to 30 points. Obviously, 10 to 30 points is worth more than five. So why save the coupon for 5 points when you could have used it for something that's worth 10 to 30? The way you get to your case study is you'll go through your modules, go into Unit 1, and then under the specific chapter, you'll see, in this case, Chapter 5, you'll see a link for the Chapter 5 case study. And then when you go there, you'll have an option to download it three different ways. You'll have a doc file, an RTF file, and a PDF file. Doc, that's your Google or your Google Docs or your Microsoft Word version. PDF, that's just a PDF file. If you pay for that PDF editor, you can, edit it and type in there. If not, then you have to print it and then write on it and submit it as a digital version. And then RTF is just a generic text file. If you're running some odd software like a Linux software or something on your computer, and you can't open any of the Microsoft or Google forms, then the case study in RTF file is just a text file. It's all words, no pictures on that one. But it does give you the option to still complete the assignment if you don't have access to Google Docs or Microsoft Word or I forgot the Apple version of it. And again, like I mentioned, it's due no later than 11:30 p.m. In this case, September 6th, which is Saturday. And then Dr. Cotter does leave a couple different like tips for how to complete the case um, in the specific case study link. So if you have questions on them or if you're kind of confused, I'd always go back to those links she puts in their little tidbits of knowledge to kind of help you complete the case study. But for the most part, as long as you pay attention in class to do your tutorials, you're not really going to be thrown off on these case studies. They're fairly straightforward. And it also is the same structure on the exams. So if you can understand the structure for the case studies, you'll do pretty well on the exam. Okay, so some of the best practices that I've seen over the last 5 years to have successful case studies and to get your max points is download and or print the case study and look it over before lecture. The reason we want to do this is that when we talk about things in lecture, you might recall, oh, hey, we talked about that uh, in lecture, and I read that in the case study. Maybe I can go ahead and jot this down on the side because now I have an answer in my case study. Um, there's some stuff in the handouts and the study guide that won't directly lead you to the answer in the case study, but sometimes Dr. Cotter gives these little practice cases in class that will directly impact the answers on the case study. And so by paying attention in class and reading over the case study beforehand, you can already make those links and have an easier time completing the case study. Second is, write down any questions that you have uh, about the case study or about the unit or the lecture before, um, so that Dr. Cotter and I can help you look at those or answer those in class. Even during lab, sometimes we've got some downtime in lab while we're waiting for certain things to spin down, or we've got a lot of microbiology is very slow in terms of a lab science, and so there's a lot of stuff that takes a little bit of time. And so during those little micro breaks, Dr. Cotter will sometimes go and answer or add to the lecture material. And so if you have some questions beforehand, that's like a perfect time for Dr. Cotter to look at that and then talk about it in the lecture or the lab to get your questions answered before we go into the rest of the weekend into the weekend. Okay, number three is probably the biggest one that I've seen people struggle with and lose a lot of points on. When starting your case study, you always want to start from question one and work your way down. So the way you want to visualize how the case study is made is the idea is we just throw you into a scenario. You're a doctor, a nurse, a PA, whatever, and we're going to give you a 1 to 2 paragraph scenario, which we'll see here when I go into the practice case. And the idea is you're analyzing it from the clinician point of view. So your first step is going to be, okay, I've got this patient. I'm looking for these signs and symptoms. I want to start taking some samples here. And then from there, you're going to go and jump into the case where question one says, hey, question one, I saw that this cell has a nucleoid. What kind of microbe do you think this is? And if you go back to some of your notes or some older classes like Bio 181, 182, you'll know that nucleoids are primarily in bacteria, whereas us as eukaryotic organisms, we will have nucleuses. And so once you start on question one, you start going down a certain path, kind of like a choose your own adventure of how to answer the questions. If you decide to jump and do like question 8 first, you might miss a couple of the clues that were given to you in questions 3, 5, 6, whatever, and you've actually answered question 8 incorrectly. Another thing that could happen is that we sometimes have biases in our answers. Um, I'm sure some of you have either might have family members in clinical roles or might be serving in a clinical role yourself. And when you sometimes see some of the signs and symptoms, you'll realize that, oh, hey, I've seen this before. I think this is chlamydia or tetanus. I'll just throw some general ones out there. And what ends up happening is as you answer the case study questions, you in your head are thinking, this is tetanus, so all my answers are gonna match what should lead me to tetanus. And like I said, I've seen this go really wrong with people where they give us answers to lead them to their conclusion, but they don't actually read the question and answer the questions that are being asked on the case study. And if you think about it, these case studies are supposed to be worked in order. So question one helps you with question two helps you with question three, three to four, four to five, etc. So if you mess up something in question three, it's going to lead you to have wrong answers in questions four through eight, and then you'll have the wrong conclusion. So you'll miss a large chunk of points by not following this process properly. Kind of some of the examples that I've seen. So like number one, so Sittinger microbe doesn't have a flagella in question eight when the case study doesn't mention anything about flagella until question 11. So question eight might be trying to tell you to separate these two organisms one way or another, and you mentioned, well, this organism has flagella. Well, we don't talk about flagella. You don't know there's flagella until much later in the case study, and this could lead you to putting down the wrong answer or an incomplete answer in question eight. And again, once you see the practice case, it'll some of the stuff will kind of make a little bit more sense. Another thing too is having your answers make sense. So I've seen students answer that their microbe can only be gram-negative bacteria, but then their answer is a gram-positive bacteria. Um, again, once we go into bacteria, this will make a little bit more sense. But basically, they have eliminated the correct answer at the beginning, but then later put that the correct answer is the thing they eliminated in question three. So it always helps to go back, look it over, and make sure that your thought process makes sense. So that again, you're not putting in incorrect answers and then missing out on large chunks of points. Um, excuse me. So number four is something that I offer for my classes. So if you are working on your case study, either partially completed or fully completed, you can do is you can send it to me for a review. So what I'll do is I'll review your case study and I'll give you feedback on questions that you need to either add more detail on or questions that you may be on the wrong track on. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to fix it. So what I mean by that is I'm not going to give you the right answer or the correct answer, but what I will do is say, hey, for question five, you gave me this detail, but you didn't really explain why you gave me. I need you to add more detail here. I might also say, hey, in question five, you are honestly really off track. So why don't we go back to pages 27 through 30 of your handout, go look at that again, and then rethink about this question. And again, this is more of a way for you to kind of work on the case studies on your own, um, and then give me the opportunity to give you a chance to go back and make some changes before you submit them to Dr. Cotter for the final grade. The deadlines for these reviews are Friday night at midnight. The reason I say that is that I do work nights, and the last chance I'll have to actually give you feedback will be Saturday morning when I get off of work. Um, Usually I go to bed around 9 to 10 a.m. Um, so after I go to bed on Saturday morning, I'm not going to wake up until it's time for me to go back to work around 5:30 p.m. And honestly, at that point, you're risking me not being able to look at your stuff because I have a busy night at work or something. So the sooner the better. But if you do send them to me by Friday at midnight, I guarantee you'll have them by Saturday morning, so that you have time to make your changes and submit them to Dr. Cotter the Saturday evening. Again, I do offer this for every case study, every case study this semester. So you can always message me every week with your case study. I'll review it, give it back to you, and you have time to make those changes and then submit them. This kind of rolls into number five, best practice, what not to do. Don't wait to the last minute to do your case. A lot of times you might rush through some of the questions just to get the assignment done. Other times I've seen people turn in blank case studies. So they download the case study, maybe they make a copy, they write on the copy, and then when it's time to turn it in, because they're running out of time, they submit a blank case study. That's worth 0 out of 10 or out of 20 or out of 30. So just give yourself some time so that you're not ultimately stressing on these case studies. If you need to, what I used to do was I would look at the case study, maybe answer 1 or 2 questions, go about my day, come back when I had more time, and then just slowly work through the case study. But for the most part, these case studies shouldn't take you more than an hour to 2 hours, in my experience. If sitting down and doing it all in 1 to 2 hours. But if you need to break it up in chunks because you don't have the time, you can do that too. Just don't wait to the last minute so you're not losing points. Again, the case studies um, are worth a lot of points in the lecture, especially if you compare that to the exams. Your 3 case studies or 4 case studies for 1 unit usually add up to about an exam or a little bit under the exam. So don't uh, don't miss out on this large chunk of points. Okay, the study guide. So Dr. Cotter gave you all these booklets with study guides and handouts and some other useful pieces of information and resources. The study guide is the official study guide or study material for the exam. So what that means is anything on the study guide can be asked on the exam. If you study only what's on the study guide and nothing else in the class, you'll most likely get a B or above in this class. Um, Most of the stuff in the exams come directly from the study guide. We just might rephrase some of it so it doesn't look exactly the same. Second to that is also the case studies. Some of the cases in the case study will look similar on the exam, but might be worded differently. Um, so if you study the study guide, get your case studies completed and filled out, you'll probably do really well on the exams. For the study guide, you want to use tutorials, handouts in the book to try to fill in your section as much as possible before the lecture. When I say section, we'll say like, hey, chapter 5, like I'll use chapter 5 for this case. Eukaryotes is pages 5, 6, and part of page 7. So you want to have pages 5, 6, and part of page 7 completed in theory before you come back to lecture. And then when you're in lecture, we'll go over the material, some of the highlights, and then you can make those changes on your study guide or add to the study guide so you have more information and help you prepare for the exam. So on that note, let's do a very quick practice. Let me do a time check. I think I've got about 10 minutes or so. So I think we have plenty of time to do this. So the mini case. So the case will kind of look something like this. So my case here is called bread. You look a little green today. So you are hungry, decide to go through all your food in the kitchen. You notice you have some cheese, ham, and bread, so you decide to make a sandwich. When you take out the bread, you notice some green dots and white hairs on the edge. Your roommate tells you just to tear the edge off and eat it, but since you're a scientist, you know better, and you decide to do some research before you decide to eat that bread. So it's kind of like, a very funny little quirky scenario. You'll see some very similar ones in the case studies, but this kind of leads you into how we're going to go into this case. So already what our case is going to look into is we need to figure out what this green little piece of this dot with white hairs is. When I talk about biases, most of you could probably look at that and say like, oh yeah, that's mold. You're probably right. Honestly, you actually are right. But the whole idea of the class is, okay, that is mold, but if you had no idea what mold is, how could you go about determining what mold is scientifically? So you'll have the first question. You decide to take a swab of the green area and send it to your friend's DNA lab because you're well connected, and she informs you that the sample has 60S, 40S ribosomes. What kind of microbes on the list are eliminated by this finding? And then you have a list here of bacteria, fungus, and protozoan. So because you've taken a microbiology and bio 181 and 182, you know that fungus and protozoans are eukaryotic and they have 60S, 40S ribosomes. However, bacteria are prokaryotic, and they have 50S, 30S ribosomes. Therefore, this green thing could not be caused by a bacteria, so you eliminate bacteria from the list. Then in question 2, you say, all right, later your friend comes back with some more results and tells you that she found some reproductive spores and chitin cell wall were on this microbe. With this new information, what else can you eliminate from question 1? So since we already eliminated bacteria, we don't have to talk about bacteria in question 2. Bacteria is already off the list. Next would be, okay, well, we know that fungi have reproductive spores and a chitin cell wall, while protozoans do not have a cell wall or reproductive spores. Therefore, protozoan is eliminated. Again, we use the second piece of information in question 2 to eliminate protozoan. However, in question 1, you don't have the information in question 2, so you can't eliminate protozoans in question 1. And this is what I'm talking about when I mentioned jumping ahead. If you read it over and you look at question 2, you say, well, it can't be protozoan. So in question 1, um, without thinking about it, you'll just put fungus and you'll have, oh, bacteria are eliminated because they have 50S, 30S ribosomes, and protozoans are eliminated because they do not have a chitin cell wall. You can't say that in question 1, and you'll lose points for that. But in question 2, you can say that because we gave you that piece of information in question 2. And then in question 3, at home, we like to keep temperature of the kitchen at around 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Based on the information, what kind of fungus do you think grew on the bread? So you come down and your answer is going to say, well, yeast grows between 35 and 40, and mold grows under 30 degrees Celsius. Therefore, mold must be growing on the bread. And then your question 4, if I had put a question 4, would be, based on some of the information we gave you, what kind of mold do you think this is? Realistically, that's probably not where the mold question would go, but some of the bacteria and fungi have specific names, especially bacteria. So we might give you, okay, based on this information, what is the genus and species of this microbe? And you could say Streptococcus pneumoniae, Staphylococcus aureus, whatever for the bacterias. Just know that that would be your question 4. But you can kind of see just the way the case goes. A couple quick questions to have you write down some of the characteristics of the microbe. Knowing those characteristics, we can then eliminate things on our list. And at the very end, we determine scientifically that it's mold, even though we probably already knew this was mold. And then question 4 would be the microbe. Now, with the way the case study is framed, the microbe is only really worth like 1 to 2 points, knowing the microbe species, genus and species. So if all of this is correct, but you just don't get the microbe name right, the species and the genus right, you'll still get a majority of your points. But the whole idea is making sure that the process that you take to determine what you have as a microbe is followed, and that's how you'll maximize your points on the case study. Now, again, this is very short. The case studies will typically have between 5 to 10 questions. And some case studies might be like, instead of having one large case study worth 20 points, you might have too many case studies in your case. So you'll have case 1 worth 10 points and case 2 worth 10 points. Just know the process is the same. Don't jump ahead, and then just answer the question that's being asked in that question. That way you don't accidentally forget to put answers or eliminate answers before you have certain pieces of information. And if you still have questions as I talk about this, just find me after lecture on Monday, and we can kind of talk about it, or just message me as well. Okay, last piece of little help I'm going to give you, kind of help you start your study guide if you haven't done so already. We already kind of talked about some of these in the case. So I mentioned, hey, fungus and protozoans have 50S, 30S ribosomes, and bacteria has 30S or 50S, 30S ribosomes. So if you go to your chapter 5 or your study guide for chapter 5, question 1, which is on page 5, You can go down to ribosome subunit size. You put 50S, 30S, 60/40, 60/40 for protozoan and fungus, and 50S, 30S for bacteria. The other thing we gave you is, or that I gave you, was that fungi have reproductive spores and a chitin cell wall, while protozoans do not have a cell wall or reproductive spores. So go back, fungus, chitin cell wall, reproductive spores. Protozoan, no cell wall, no spores. Pretty simple. And this last one, I don't have the table shown, but it's on page 6. You're gonna have a question, I believe, about temperature. So just know that yeast grows between 35 and 40 degrees Celsius, while mold grows under 30 degrees Celsius. And like I said, I don't have that in here, but you're smart. I think you can go ahead on page 6 and write those down to kind of get your study guide jump started. Okay, and the last question, give me a second. Sorry, my throat's a little dry, is citations. So being a scientific course, Dr. Cotter wants citations for your case studies. In this class, we use the College or the Council of Science Editors, or CSE format. We don't need you to cite every question, or sorry, every answer for the case studies. We just want your cases cited at the very end of the case study. So you can go about, filling out questions 1 through 10, put your answers in there, and then at the end of your case study, you'll see a citation section, and you'll just put all the citations under there. This is our most commonly used sources. So the handouts, the pink infectious disease handout, the textbook, the lesson builder, and this is how you would cite them. So you always lead off with the name or the author, the document, so the Unit 1 handout, Chapter 5 Eukaryotes, the place it was published, so Dr. Cotter's handouts were Phoenix College, or particularly Phoenix, Arizona, whereas some of these other ones like Cowan, that's Boston, on some of the other books are from New York, that kind of thing. The publisher itself, so McGraw-Hill or Phoenix College Department of Bioscience, and then any pages used. Anything outside of this, you can still use things like web pages, other books, things like that. Just cite them properly. I would just be careful when you're Googling things, especially because now Google uses their AI feature. And sometimes the AI pieces together information and doesn't give it to you correctly. So whatever you are citing, make sure that you cite properly, and then just double check anything that you are read or given. I've seen some answers that are ridiculously specific, talking about like certain protein sizes for making the cell walls, things like that. And they're using that for answers. Like that's too specific for this type of course. We're a microbiology class for pre-med majors, and just answer what we teach you. Don't go above and beyond and answer these crazy things, because typically we know that you probably copy and pasted that if you're using words or um, biological functions that are like 400 or master's level, things that we didn't teach you in the class. And so if your answers have that, we're probably going to look at it like, okay, did you just copy paste this answer, or did you actually answer this properly? That's really all I have for this one. Like I said, it didn't take up too much of your time. We're looking at almost about 30 minutes for this one. If y'all have any questions, feel free to message me. Like I said, our Chapter 5 case study is due this Saturday. Feel free to work on it and send it to me before Friday at midnight, and I'll review it, give you all some feedback, and go from there. And then today, just know that your study guide pages 5 through 7 are due. Specifically 5, 6, and then the part of page 7 that is for eukaryotes, not the virus part. And you got to submit that tonight by 11:30 p.m. Dr. Cotter has a lecture for the eukaryotes. That's about 40, maybe it's like an hour long to kind of help you fill out that study guide. That way you don't miss out on key information that you'll need for the case study. Okay, like I said, that's all I have. Thank you all for paying attention and for joining. And if you have any questions, reach out. I will see you all next week.